Let's talk about cars, a symbol of American ingenuity, pride, and the backbone of countless communities across the country. And let's talk about the people who build them. Generations of skilled workers have poured their sweat and expertise into these machines, shaping not just vehicles, but the very fabric of American life. For decades, an automotive assembly line job was a ticket to the American middle class: steady work, a home, maybe even the car you built. These jobs offered security, dignity, and a sense of purpose, helping families thrive and communities grow. But today, that promise is crumbling. The once bustling factories are growing quiet, and the future feels uncertain for thousands of workers. Nissan and Subaru are shutting down major U.S. operations, sending 40,000 workers to the unemployment line. For many, it's not just a job lost, it's a way of life slipping away. This isn't a blip, it's a seismic event, triggered by the very trade policies meant to save American manufacturing. The shockwaves are being felt in towns and cities that once depended on these plants. The idea was simple: toughen up on trade, bring jobs back. Politicians promised a revival, a return to the golden age of American industry. Instead, we're watching factories empty out. The reality is far more complicated than the slogan suggested. The global economy is a web, not a board game. Every move has consequences, often reaching far beyond what anyone expected. Trying to fix it with blunt force has backfired. The tools used were too crude for such a complex system. The names on the layoff notices are Nissan and Subaru, but the policy signature is Donald Trump's. His administration's approach has left many workers feeling abandoned. This is the real-world cost of turning complex economics into political slogans. Behind every headline, there are families facing tough choices and uncertain futures. While the U.S. reels, Canada stands by, largely unscathed. Their approach to trade and manufacturing has shielded their workers from the worst of the fallout. It's a tale of two countries, two strategies, and two very different outcomes. One marked by upheaval, the other by resilience. How did we get here? One word: tariffs. Trump-era tariffs slapped a 25% tax on steel, aluminum, and car parts imported into the U.S. The goal? Force companies to buy American, boost domestic manufacturing. But the auto industry isn't monopoly, it's Jenga. Every part is connected globally. Suddenly, building cars in America became cripplingly expensive. Nissan and Subaru, who invested billions in U.S. plants, were hit hardest. Tariffs made every car rolling off their lines more costly, leaving them two bad options: eat the cost or pass it to consumers. Meanwhile, other countries retaliated. Canada, a huge market for U.S.-built cars, hit back with its own tariffs. Now, American-made cars face double taxation, first on parts, then on exports. The protective wall became a cage, trapping automakers in a high-cost nightmare. Instead of saving jobs, tariffs pushed companies to look for the exit. The result? A mass exodus and tens of thousands of lost jobs. So what did Nissan and Subaru do when faced with mounting costs and uncertainty in the American market? They searched for a way out, a strategy to survive in a rapidly changing landscape. For these companies, the answer was clear: if the environment becomes too hostile, you don't stick around and hope for the best. You adapt or you leave. If it's too expensive to build cars in the U.S., stop building them there. It's a basic rule of business survival: cut your losses and move production to where it makes sense. Nissan, already in the midst of a global restructuring, suddenly faced even more pressure from new tariffs and rising costs in America. The result? Job cuts, downsizing, and a strategic shift away from the U.S. market. Factories that once buzzed with activity began to fall silent. Subaru made its intentions clear. They moved all Canadian market production out of Indiana and back to Japan, reversing years of investment in American manufacturing. A Japanese company, once proud to build cars in America for North American drivers, now finds it cheaper and more reliable to ship vehicles across the Pacific Ocean. This isn't a story about American workers failing, it's a story about American policy making it impossible for companies to stay. The Lafayette plant, once a shining example of global cooperation and economic opportunity, is now losing a huge chunk of its output and workforce. The tariff war, intended to protect American jobs, ended up punishing the very companies that provided them, leaving communities in turmoil. Automakers are fleeing the fire, taking an estimated 40,000 jobs with them, jobs that supported families and entire towns. The policies meant to strengthen the U.S. auto industry have backfired, turning America into a high-cost, low-profit zone for global manufacturers. The result? Empty factories, devastated communities, and a stark warning to other global companies considering investment in the US? The message is clear. Unpredictable and protectionist policy is bad for business, and the world is watching. The exodus is just beginning, and its impact will be felt for years to come. Let's zoom in on Subaru, a case study in unintended consequences. Subaru, a brand known for its loyal customer base and rugged, reliable vehicles, found itself at the center of a global trade storm. What happened to Subaru in 2024 is a powerful example of how quickly the rules of the game can change for automakers, and how those changes ripple through entire communities. In 2024, Subaru Canada sold over 68,000 vehicles. Nearly 18,000 were built in Indiana. For years, this cross-border supply chain was a win-win. Canadian drivers got their cars quickly, and American workers kept busy on the assembly line. Then tariffs hit. 25% to get parts into Indiana, another 25% to export finished cars to Canada. Suddenly, the cost of doing business skyrocketed, and the math no longer made sense. The once efficient supply chain was now a liability. Subaru did the math and shifted Canadian-bound production to Japan, where a free trade deal with Canada means zero tariffs. This move was logical on paper, but it had real-world consequences for workers and communities in Indiana. The Indiana plant's share of Canadian sales will drop from 26% to just 10%. That's a dramatic decline, and it means fewer shifts, less overtime, and more uncertainty for American workers. Subaru will try to fill the gap by building other models in Indiana, but the damage is done. The plant's future is now tied to unpredictable trade policies, not just market demand. Automakers now plan production around tariffs, not efficiency. Instead of focusing on innovation or customer needs, they're forced to react to shifting political winds. Subaru's profits dropped 16%, and they warn of a $1.5 billion hit if tariffs worsen. That's money that could have gone into new jobs, better technology, or expanded facilities. These aren't just numbers. They're lost investments, canceled projects, and thousands of jobs gone. The impact is felt not just in factories but in local businesses and families who depend on them. The tariff policy forced costly, inefficient workarounds. Companies are spending more to do less, and the entire supply chain suffers. The lesson: trade barriers can destroy the very jobs they're meant to protect. Instead of strengthening the industry, they can hollow it out from within. And the ripple effects are only growing, spreading uncertainty and hardship far beyond the factory floor. Now let's look north, to Canada, where trade policy is playing out very differently. While the US auto sector is in crisis, Canada is stable, thanks to smart free trade agreements with the EU and Japan. When US tariffs hit, Canada had options. Subaru Canada simply pivoted to importing cars from Japan, tariff-free. This move protected consumers, stabilized supply, and shielded jobs. Other automakers are taking note. Relying on US production is now a risky bet. Canada's network of trade deals offers predictability and stability. The irony: US tariffs meant to punish others have actually rewarded countries like Canada. The US is now an island of high costs, while Canada enjoys the benefits of open trade. Building bridges, not walls, has insulated Canada from the chaos. Nissan and Subaru's retreat from the US is sending shockwaves far beyond the factory floor. For automakers, the financial pain is real. Subaru's profits are down, and Nissan is slashing costs. Tariffs have turned US export operations into a money pit, forcing brutal job cuts. Politically, it's a disaster. Trump promised to protect American workers, but his policies cost 40,000 jobs. The very people meant to be protected are now the biggest victims. Critics call this Exhibit A against tariffs. They didn't just fail. They actively harmed the industry. The US auto sector is weaker, less competitive, and thousands of families are paying the price. It's a political own goal of historic proportions. The fallout will be felt for years. Let's talk about the real cost, people. 40,000 jobs lost isn't just a number, it's 40,000 families facing uncertainty. These were good, skilled jobs that supported entire communities. When a factory closes, the shock waves hit local businesses, suppliers, and neighborhoods. The true impact is far greater than the headline number. Think of the single parents, veterans, and new homeowners now left in limbo. They believed these policies would protect them. Instead, they're left picking up the pieces. The human cost is staggering. lost security, rising anxiety, fractured communities. The promise of American manufacturing has been shattered by a few strokes of a presidential pen. For these workers, this isn't theory, it's a crisis with no easy answers. What's next for North American auto manufacturing? The landscape is forever changed. Trust in the U.S. as a stable place to invest has been shaken. Companies are diversifying production to avoid future shocks. The U.S. is no longer the default hub. Automakers may split production across Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. This makes supply chains more resilient, but the U.S. loses its central role. For American workers, the future is uncertain, especially as the industry shifts to electric vehicles. Tariffs complicate everything, making U.S.-built EVs less competitive if key parts are imported. The big question, is U.S. policy about creating jobs or winning political arguments? If protectionism continues, investment will flow elsewhere. The future is global, and walling off the U.S. is a recipe for decline. Here's the bottom line. A protectionist policy meant to save jobs has destroyed 40,000 of them. Tariffs turned the U.S. into a high-cost island, driving automakers away. Canada, with open trade, became a safe harbor, protecting its industry and consumers. The contrast is stark. One country built walls and faces economic rubble, the other built bridges and thrives. The verdict is clear. Tariffs failed workers, industry, and the country. The global economy can't be bullied. Companies will always find a way around barriers. The U.S. auto industry is at a crossroads. Keep isolating or learn from this disaster. Real strength comes from cooperation, not isolation. For 40,000 workers, that lesson can't come soon enough.